Well, good morning, everyone. You may be seated. Welcome to all of you, and welcome to those of you who are watching online. We're so glad that you have joined us as well. This morning, I want to release the little kids, ages 3 through 5th grade. You are welcome to go to your ABC classes right now, and we will have our separate class here right now, so to speak, that is. Well, if you are new here, I want to invite you to fill out one of these Hey cards. This would be an opportunity for us to keep connected with you going forward. We'd love to welcome you to being here, and this, we're not going to sell this information in any way or anything like that. This is simply for us to be able to connect with you. So we would love to have you fill out one of those Hey cards from the pew there in front of you. Well, this morning we're continuing our family series, looking at young adults. So we've looked at mothers. We're going to be looking at fathers next week. You'll have a guest speaker here, Dave Ekstrom, who you know probably from the interim time before I was hired here. So he's going to be coming back and filling in next week because this week I am on jury duty. And so I won't have the opportunity to prepare a sermon, so unless you want to just hear me shoot from the hip next week, we're going to have Dave Ekstrom come in and speak instead. Well, angst. I mean, it's a very descriptive word that has a lot to do with anxiety or anger. It means a painful constriction. That's where angst comes in. And if you've ever dealt with anxiety, well, you know what that sense of constriction is all about. You see, the injustices of the world, you see those things and you want to do something about it. Kind of like that video that we saw of that young woman who saw the injustices of the world, that people just go hungry here, even in America, and she wanted to do something about it. Taking a cooler of sandwiches to give out to those people in need. In some sense, those injustices cause you stress and anxiety. You are discomfited by that state of affairs. And this discomfiture could be on account of the plight of the poor, or the oppressed, or the disabled, or the spiritually lost. But this angst moves young people to action. Even so, we can't be continually swayed by the latest cause celeb, even if Greta Thunberg is leading the charge. So how can we take that zeal and balance it with everyday living? Winston Churchill once said this: if you're not a liberal before you're 25, you're heartless. If you're a liberal after 25, you're brainless. Okay, that's Winston Churchill, not David Cross, okay? Don't attack the messenger here. What I want to get across to you today is that often when you feel that sense of passion and conviction, it is from the Lord. You might have been wounded yourself, and that's why you feel an acute sense of justice and wanting to right the wrongs in the world. Wherever God has put that conviction in you, make it set apart, useful to the master. Well, it's gardening season, and I have to laugh at myself because I specially bought a prop for today to show you this. I bought a terracotta pot. Okay, it was only $1. Don't get too anxious about it. But I bought this terracotta pot, and I was planning on breaking it here for you so that you could see that even that can be useful. And I remembered to bring it from Wisconsin to our house, only 5 minutes from here, but it's sitting on the kitchen table over there at our house. So you'll just have to picture this with me. Now, if you're in gardening at all, then you know that you can't just take the plants and pack it full all the way top to bottom with soil and jam that tight. Why? Because there's no room for water to penetrate and to get to the roots as they need to. What you'll end up with is some rotting roots at the bottom of what used to look like a nice flower. Instead, you need what is called aggregate. You need something at the bottom to keep the soil loose, to provide drainage. One of the best forms of aggregate is broken pots from previous gardening endeavors. So that's right, if you happen to break an old ceramic or terracotta pot, like I was going to bring here today, don't throw it away. It's perfect for the bottom of your pots. Instead, set it apart. It is useful to the master gardener, however the case might be, prepared for every good work. And so that brings us to today. What we're focusing on is running away, first of all, and then turning away, and then giving yourselves away, letting yourselves be carried away. So as we're looking at today's text, we will see the way the potter sets youth apart, those who are useful to the master, prepared for every good work. Our text today is taken from 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 22 to 26. But as I often do, I want to start reading just a little bit before that in order to establish a little bit of context to what we're talking about here. Now, keep in mind the general context that this is Paul's second letter to Timothy. And that's interesting to note because most of Paul's letters were written to whole churches, right? The church in Galatia, the church in Ephesus, the church in Corinth. But this is written to an individual, Timothy. And then there's Titus, for example, as well. Another pastoral letter that is meant to give encouragement to these people as they were leading churches as a pastor, each of them. During Paul's mission trips around the Mediterranean, he left Timothy in Ephesus, which is located in modern-day Turkey. In modern times, Ephesus is probably best known as the place where Efes beer is brewed. Just a Turkish bit of tidbit there for you. Now, as I mentioned, Timothy was the pastor of the Ephesians church, but he was a young pastor. In other words, at least in Paul's mind, he was in his 30s at the time, so that makes him young. That makes me very old, but let's not push that point too far. So Paul encouraged him not to let people look down on him because he was only in his youth, in his 30s. And that pertains directly to today's passage where we look today at youth and young adults. Now, earlier in chapter 2, Paul encourages Timothy to work diligently to show himself an approved workman, unlike the warning that he gives about divisive people like Hymenaeus and Philetus, whose teaching spread like gangrene. How would you like that to be your one description of you in the Bible, that your teaching spreads like gangrene? Well, let's go ahead and start reading from chapter 2, verse 20, in order to establish a little bit of the context here from today. We'll be reading verses 20 through 26. It says this: "Now in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some for honorable use, some for dishonorable. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from what is dishonorable, he will be a vessel for honorable use, set apart as holy, useful to the master of the house, ready for every good work. So flee youthful passions and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. Have nothing to do with foolish, ignorant controversies. You know that they breed quarrels. And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, patiently enduring evil, correcting his opponents with gentleness. God may perhaps grant them repentance, leading to a knowledge of the truth. And they may come to their senses and escape from the snare of the devil after being captured by him to do his will." May the Lord bless his word to our understanding here this morning. So this first point is the command to run away. That's what he's literally saying. Flee youthful passions. Run away. Incidentally, that's how we know that this is addressed to youth, because youth typically have youthful passions. See how that works? The only reason that Paul would bring up youthful passions is because youth are susceptible to youthful passions. Paul wants to address the things that pertain to people's lives, to the people that he's writing to. For instance, when he instructs fathers not to provoke their children to anger, why is he saying that? Because fathers have the propensity to demand too much of their children, which tends to lead those children to anger. He's speaking specifically to fathers. If Paul were writing to little children, he would not write, "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above." No. Instead, he writes, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother." Why is it that he gives that instruction to children? Because their propensity is not to obey their parents or not to honor their father and mother. And he wants to correct that. So he tailors his message to the people that he's writing to, which is just what he does for these young adults who have a propensity to youthful passions. Now, obviously, young adults have raging hormones that give them these youthful passions. Paul's warning is that giving into these youthful passions can make a person dishonorable. Purifying oneself from anything that is dishonorable makes a person a special instrument, set apart, useful to the master, prepared for every good work. Now, someone might say, "Hey, God made me this way. I have these passions because God put them in me. I can do whatever I fancy." Well, to be sure, God made you with strong passions, and he made you to be able to control those passions so that you are useful to the master. How can you consider yourself prepared for every good work if you are controlled by pornography or lust or the physical intimacy that should be reserved for marriage? God made you so that you can have thrilling enjoyment of those physical pleasures within marriage. But if they aren't sacred, if they aren't reserved for marriage, then there's nothing special about those pleasures. They are not set apart for honor. They are corrupted into something common, worthless. On the other hand, when those passions are controlled and reserved for an honorable union between a husband and wife, just as God intended, then your control over those passions is harnessed for every good work. And this goes beyond just that marital union. But think about this for a minute. If those are life's strongest urges and you have control over them, you can control your urges for all sorts of things. You can control the discipline in your life to use your finances to relieve the plight of the poor, such as that woman did in that video that we saw earlier today. If you could control life's strongest desires, you could be useful for whatever the Lord might have you do. My daughter, Faith, is exercising this right now. She is in Southeast Asia. She's doing ministry there. She's taking time that she could have spent here, just kind of lazily sitting around and enjoying the summer. She's taking time that she could have spent working and making money so that she has some more spending money and that sort of thing. Instead, she's spending money to go serve the Lord in Southeast Asia. So that's taking that control and using that control, that discipline over life for God's purposes. She is pressed by this plight of people who don't have the gospel. She wants to do something about it. You're not free to pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace if you are practicing unrighteousness. Simple as that. You are not operating from a pure heart, but from a soiled heart that is stained by willful disobedience to God. You know what the right thing is to do, but you're not doing it. You're turning directly away from it. That is willful disobedience to God. Supplement your faith with goodness, goodness with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control. So that leads us to turning away. Run away is the first command, but that's not the only command. We are to turn away from other propensities as well. By the way, the assumption is that those of you who say like me, I don't know, exceed the age limit of what is considered to be young adult. Maybe I'm a little bit past that, okay? Those of you who are old people like me, let's cut to the chase with this assumption that you've learned the lesson to flee youthful passions. That's the assumption that Paul is working under, that you're not slave to those passions that might have driven you when you were youthful. If you are a slave to your passions, it's time to grow up. You've got to rein that in. You can't continue to live as a slave to your passions and expect to serve the Lord fully. When Paul now lists some other propensities of young adults, don't think you're exempt from these because you are mature in age. They apply to all of us. As you can imagine, though, foolish and ignorant disputes fill the dormitories of universities the world over. I don't know what it is, if there's something in the water or exactly what, but we feel it's necessary to argue about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, or whether God can make a rock that's too big for him to lift, being the all-powerful. No, I mean, why? Or whether a tree that falls in the forest makes a sound even though there's no one there to hear it. I mean, have any of you ever had such discussions and disputes and arguments? That's the very definition of a foolish and ignorant dispute. And yet, I was one of those, definitely, who did this. And Christian colleges are not immune from this. No, we just put bigger, fancier words on it, like supralapsarian and infralapsarian and sublapsarian. If you don't know what those are, good for you. You've turned from ignorant disputes, which breed quarrels. We would do well to heed what Augustine says. He says, in essentials, unity, non-essentials, liberty, and in all things, charity. Now, if you'd like to quarrel with me about whether it was Augustine who really said that, please read the aforementioned quotation. So we aren't simply instructed to flee immorality, but we are instructed to turn away from disputes and quarrels. In fact, we're instructed to be gentle to everyone. When we're teaching, we are to be patient, even with our opponents. If you are only patient with those who agree with you, well, that doesn't count. That's not patience. That's agreement is what that is. Supplement your faith with goodness, your goodness with knowledge, and your knowledge with self-control. And that's how you can get carried away. So turn away, or run away, turn away, and get carried away. We stepped back a bit and included a few verses to get the context before jumping into today's text. So now I want to step back again and look at the context as we turn our attention to the end of today's passage. Verse 20 says this, "Now in a great house are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some for honorable use, some for dishonorable." The great house that is being referred to is the church. Paul is saying that in the church there will be vessels for honorable use and vessels for dishonorable use. We could piece together from verses 14 to 19, if you want to look a little bit farther back. This is why I encourage you to have a Bible open in front of you so that you can look back, that Paul is drawing a contrast between good, solid preachers From verse 15, where Awana Clubs is started, where it says, approved workmen are not ashamed. And he's drawing that contrast between them and others, like Hymenaeus and Philetus, whose teaching spreads like gangrene. So Paul is drawing that contrast. He's putting that into place, saying the vessels for dishonorable use are those with false teaching, and all of those who accept that false teaching. If you're living in sexual sin, or with the teaching of sexual sin living in you, you are one of those vessels of dishonorable use. Your use in the church is to clarify and contrast bad teaching. You stand against the teaching of the Bible. So you are a demonstration of good teaching gone bad. This point continues in today's text. Without any apology, the Apostle Paul commands you to abandon the foolish and ignorant teachings that breed quarrels among you. He is very intentionally telling you as young adults not to fall into these youthful passions, but to pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace from a pure heart. He says this because it is the most loving thing that he can do for you. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the pastor from Germany during the Nazi era, he said this. He said, nothing can be more cruel than the tenderness that consigns another to his sin. Nothing can be more compassionate than the severe rebuke that calls a brother back from the path of sin. The call is there then to strongly call you back from false teaching about sexual sin. And you harness that. If you can exhibit self-control over that, you can exhibit self-control over all of the different facets of your life. If you're honest with yourself, you know the inclination is to just go along with what the world teaches on sin and other different things, what they prize, what they honor, what they lift up, what they exalt. Paul is calling you to get carried away along with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. He wants you to be captive to God's will, not to get caught in the trap of the devil who has taken them captive to do his will. That's the contrast. I know these are very direct words, and I hope you have treated them, or I hope I have treated them justly with the same sort of directness that the Apostle Paul used with this young pastor, Timothy. Now keep in mind, he's writing to a pastor saying to flee youthful passions. I want you to recognize that Paul wrote to this pastor, and he expected that pastor was to read and teach this in the church. He was not writing to people in a red light district of Ephesus. He wasn't singling anyone out, and I hope you recognize that with me too. I don't have anyone in mind when I'm preaching this, but I'm not trying to call people on the carpet for their sin. I am trying to do justice to the words that the Apostle Paul thought were important to include in the Bible. This teaching is sacred. Marriage is sacred. We honor the marriage bed to keep it holy. So, what if you haven't? What are you supposed to do if you might be one of those people who has not kept the marriage bed holy? It may have been with men or women, or it may have been with many or with just one. It may have happened once, or it may have happened often. What are you supposed to do in order to keep the marriage bed holy? I think one of the clearest examples of this is Joshua Broome. Between 2006 and 2013, Joshua starred as Rocco Reed in over 1,000 pornographic movies with both men and women. By 2013, he was so sickened by his lifestyle that he had planned on taking his own life. He went to deposit his final paycheck when the bank teller told him, or asked him, "Joshua, is there anything else I can do for you?" And he simply lost it and broke down, tears. Joshua called his agent from the parking lot of that bank and told him he was finished. He then called his mother, who he was expecting would be getting that paycheck when he died and everything went to her. Called his mother, who had been praying for his salvation for years. He left California for good and started a new life in South Carolina, where he attended his mother's church with her. Joshua relates that he first heard and understood the gospel on Easter of 2015 and immediately gave his life to Christ. That year, he met Hope, who would eventually become his wife. Today, Joshua is pastor of Good News Baptist Church in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Can Joshua Broom keep the marriage bed holy? Can he flee youthful passions? Can Joshua be made new? You see, it's not about what you've done that makes you a vessel that's honorable or dishonorable for use. It's about what you're doing and what you will do, who you will be. No matter what you've done, you can give that over to the Lord now. And he can forgive you in Jesus' name, because the sacrifice that Jesus made is acceptable to God the Father. Will you surrender your sexual sin today? Will you confess it and honor the marriage bed to keep it holy from this day forward, like Joshua Broom has? Jesus offers that sort of renewal. Jesus extends to you that hope. Supplement your faith with goodness, goodness with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control. So what are you going to do about this today? And who are you going to tell about this? Maybe it's you, maybe it's someone else who really needs to hear this. But if the Lord is pressing it on you that today you want this to be the start of a new beginning, please feel free to come forward and pray.